Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I made a comment in the Q&As the other day about the IPF, and I thought I should make a full video to address that. And if you guys read through the Q&As from this week, you'll notice quite a few people asked me if I go deeper into this. And what I'm going to say here is going to upset some people, but for the supporters of the IPF, even some of them on YouTube, I challenge you to make a proper rebuttal to what I have to say. If you don't like what I have to say, instead of getting angry about it, present a credible argument against it, or move along and deal with it. Now, that being said, why don't I like the IPF? There's quite a few reasons. I'm going to get to the arrogance and the elitism at the end that this federation puts out in an underground sport that's always been a brotherhood, but we'll cover that at the end. Let's cover the practical stuff first. Number one, they have no regard for the safety of their lifters at all. There are no safeties in place on the squats, nothing, no monolifts, no chains, no straps, nothing. Now, people try to talk about Olympic sports. Well, guess what? People get hurt in Olympic sports. Olympic sports are a professional environment where people make their livings doing it. It's not an amateur sport to where if people get hurt, they're not getting a big paycheck or their government is going to pay for the bills to deal with their injuries necessarily. So if people get injured doing this, they're pretty much on their own, and it's a sport to where it costs you money to participate. You're not making a living. You lose money on powerlifting, even if you're the top lifters in the world. It's done for fun. It's done for ego. And most of us who compete, we love doing it, such as myself. But the fact that they put people at unnecessary risk when all the equipment is there to change that is absolutely abhorrent. And that alone by itself is reason enough for me to boycott the IPF and say I don't like it. It's a shitty federation. Just because of that by itself, that's all it should take for anybody. And anybody who could support it when the safeties are there, and most other feds use them, all the other reputable feds use safeties on the squats and things instead of just human spotters. They have no trouble doing it. The fact that they don't is abhorrent, and they don't give a shit about their lifters. And anyone who supports the IPF, you don't give a fuck about lifters either. Now, that being said, I've talked to IPF officials, and I have had friends who are IPF officials, and they say, well, we have to spend all of our money on drug testing. We can't afford stuff like that. And that goes to another point that they do, I'll get to in a minute, on equipment costs. Yeah, they have to spend all their money on drug testing so that they can try to work towards their goal of getting powerlifting into the Olympics. Well, powerlifting has always been an underground sport. It's always been fun that way. Most powerlifters like it that way. But the thing is, they're spending all of their money that could go towards safety towards drug testing, which gives the illusion of looking out for the lifters. But the reality is, they can't afford good drug testing. Even if they had triple or 10 times the budget they do now, they still couldn't afford good drug testing, and people would still beat it. The drug testing that they put forward does absolutely nothing to stop people from using. So it creates an illusion that it's a playing field with no drugs, and it lures people in who want to compete drug-free, and they don't realize that they are competing against just as many people on drugs as they would be in an untested fed, because it doesn't stop people. Anyone who wants to will, and there is an actual temptation in the IPF to use drugs, because I've known guys personally who compete in the IPF who use drugs and talk to me about it, and I've had in-face conversations with these people. They spend all of their money towards drug testing, which does nothing. It's bullshit, and they have a tiny budget for it anyway, so it's a complete waste of money instead of putting real safeties in place or doing something to help promote the lifters or look out for them or make it a more enjoyable experience for them. This is an amateur sport. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It doesn't do anything but create an illusion and lure people in with false expectations. Now, then on top of that, to raise a further budget, because they still can't afford the mediocre drug testing that they do this stuff now to where all these companies have to pay the IPF for their equipment to be used. So if people want to use their knee sleeves, and that's the only reason the IPF allows knee sleeves in raw, and they allow these SBDs in raw, which add quite a bit to your lift, is because it can generate them more money, because SBD has to pay the IPF for people to use their wrists or their knee sleeves, and if people can't use knee sleeves, they'll make less money. And so they charge people for all these things for the belts, and then the lifters have to pay extra for a piece of equipment that has been IPF certified, which has the same function that 5 or 10 other brands make and is built to pretty much similar specifications, but they have to pay more for it. So they end up paying for it so that they can do more useless and ineffective drug testing and not bother to put proper safeties in place. And then on top of that, this federation has always put forward this idea that they're the ones who made this up. It's not the rest of the world saying this. It is, they always say, well, we're the most prestigious and the most elite powerlifting federation based upon nothing but their own opinion. But since they push that so hard, and all the people on social media who compete in it push it so hard, people think that that's true, and it's not true. That's not considered to be even be true in the powerlifting world. That is just their opinion, but since they market it that way, it lures people in who want to be involved in this prestigious thing, and only your lifts count if you're in the IPF. And then the environment is so competitive, and they realize how easy it is to cheat on drug testing. Tons of them go to the drugs because they want to win medals in the most prestigious and recognized federation. And they're not willing to go to the untested to do it purely because they want the recognition of doing it in the IPF. They do it and cheat for no other reason than that, instead of just going to an untested federation because the elitist mantra that they put out. Furthermore, they divide powerlifting. They create fights inside powerlifting with a lot of their rules about not hanging out with people who compete in untested feds. You can get blackballed for that. In some countries, their actual rules state that if you compete in untested federation anywhere, you're banned from the IPF, and you can get in trouble with the judges and problems for fraternizing with people who compete in untested powerlifting. So those of us who compete in these things, or like myself, I'm an official and a referee, and we have an open policy to where we accept people of all other federations. We consider them to be fellow powerlifters. We can't fraternize with IPF guys, or they can get a slap on the wrist in their federation just for being our friend and going and working out with us. I mean, what a pile of horseshit. The fact that anybody supports this federation is disgusting. And the fact that even some of my friends and people I like personally on YouTube support this federation and try to claim it's a good fed is fucking disgusting. It is the most divisive and negative federation I have ever seen in powerlifting the way that it exists today, with no real safety rules in place, no concern or regard for the lifters, nothing more than pushing forward its own agenda of being prestigious and making as much money as it can to dump it into drug testing that doesn't even work. So yeah, me personally, I have no use for the IPF at all. And that's just my personal opinion. It doesn't represent anyone else out there. That is just how I personally feel about it. So when people ask me, what do I think of the IPF, or why don't I like it? That's why I don't like it. And I don't like the mentality of the people that it produces and the way that they behave towards other powerlifters. When a lot of us in other federations can all be friends and get along, the IPF produces a lot of lifters who just really have a stick up their ass, and they try to treat other lifters with disrespect instead of like brothers in the same sport. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.